qualifications, so masters and beyond in the City of London. And those companies that used to previously fund those courses, £37,000 I'm told, one of these courses, it's been sucked up through the apprenticeship levy. And that's why there's not, it's seemingly that there's not the pot of money that we want to claim there was, because we said it was an underspend between 1 and 2 billion. I'm told that it's not that. That's because it's not being used for what it was raised for. It's being used for other things. So if we're truly to do some of the things that we all want to do about leveling up, providing people with the latent potential in the workforce to go on and do great things, to retain more of our graduates and all those wonderful aspirations, we can't really do that unless we get some control of the levers of funding that we can start to build that pipeline for. For me, in our area, there's nobody who understands the skills needs like us three. And that's because we had to do some skills improvement plans, but we've done stuff prior to that. So we've identified what we need now, but also plan for the sectors where there will be growth. And government can't do that for us because they don't know where we're spending the billions of pounds that we get in the interventions to create the demand for the future. So unless they work with us, those skills gaps and skill shortages will continue to grow. And that's the first thing that I'd like to do. Actually, I'd like Westminster to do little other than sort of, you know, the armed forces and that for us. I think whatever I could take off that lot would be better than like Johnson.
That's interesting. Well, we heard from Jim O'Neill earlier, who was saying something quite similar, that the Department for Education is the most centralised of all the government departments. So it's interesting to hear you say that as well. And Tracy, your mayoralty is the newest of the three. I mean, what have you, in your year and a bit in the job, what have you made of the challenges and opportunities in terms of tackling the issues that we're talking about today?
Well, thanks for the invitation to speak today. And today is focused on young people. And we were just reflecting on the train, the far too long train from Leeds to Manchester, took us 50 minutes, on actually what this summer holds for young people, and thinking about all those festivals that have been cancelled and the difficulties through COVID and exam pressures. And in my region, there's a bus strike, so people can't get to their GCSEs. And, you know, all of those festivals that have cancelled, all those hopes and dreams of people who are performers, but jobs, those crafters that had market stalls, the engineers, all of that has gone. So it is an incredibly challenging time for young people, with real challenges around well-being as well. I really do think tackling the skills agenda is our opportunity as regional leaders to understand our communities and to deliver on the ground. And that's why the skills piece is so important. Now, we've lifted and shifted £65 million worth of adult education budget. We've also got Skills Connect, which is more agile. It's 16-week like boot camps training. That's in digital, in health and social care and construction. So we're intervening where we can, but exactly to Steve's point, that we know what we need. We've been able to trim from 200 providers in AEB down to 38. We're intervening with my Green Jobs Task Force. I committed to 1,000 skilled jobs in the green sector. A year in, we're already at 650 plus of those green jobs. We're really focused on opportunities for young people in the creative industries. You'll know that we've got Leeds 2023, then it's Kirklees Year of Music, Calderdale Year of Culture, Wakefield Year of Culture, all culminating in Bradford City of Culture 2025. We are a unique creative crucible in the heart of the North, with, for the first time ever, a creative committee that delegates money to the sector. We've got £12 million to spend on the creative industries, but it's also about training and skills. We know that the big problem that businesses, and whatever the sector, whether it's creative industries, whether it's Yorkshire Water or big multinationals, they come to West Yorkshire. We have these meetings about inward investment, and they say, can you guarantee us a skills pipeline? So what we're saying is, part of this package is you get this much money grant, this much as a loan, and we will guarantee you the skilled workforce, because this is the biggest challenge for our region. It's what is also a big challenge is we've got skilled young people in low skilled jobs. So we need to put the two together to put those skilled youngsters in positions where they can get those jobs. And that is about that missing link that Steve spoke about. But if I can just finally say that for an example that what Steve mentioned about the disconnect is the multiply scheme of numeracy that comes from government. They've given us a whole pot of money as part of the shared prosperity fund. All that is very welcome. It's 2/3 what we got from the European Union, by the way. But you know, multiply, thank you. It is delivered from Whitehall. It's just plonked down. Now, this is for those who are struggling with numeracy. The challenges getting people into a place where they're ready to learn GCSE maths. The interventions from those who have mental health challenges. They come from a poor background. Transport is a problem. They have a disability. We have so much more to do that I don't think government understand. They think we've ticked the box. We've given the North a bit of money to level up, but it's just so frustrating. And to the question about the powers, I think the power over skills post 16, AEB gives us powers 19 plus, and that's a lot of the damage is done then. We can really intervene at 16. We can make sure that those young people have got the pathway to a good job. And part of that is also the career service that is not devolved. And I think we should have a West Yorkshire career service. We know our region, we know every region's different. Manufacturing, creative, whatever it is, rather than this sort of pepper pot version of career service. Some schools do a great job, others don't. And what is the future of the world of work? These jobs that we don't even know the names of yet. So we've got to prepare our young people and also our adult education trainers to understand what the world of work looks like. You know, I have £40 million to spend on tackling the climate emergency. So much of that money is going to be spent on people going out to retrofit homes. We need the workforce desperately, so we need the skilled workforce to do it. So we've got a job of work when government seems to be holding back the North.
Getting a lot of agreement with that point there. Andy, if Steve's not stolen all your best lines already, let's come to you now. Now, you're a trailblazer in that yourself and Andy Streeterman talks with the government to get new powers in a variety of areas, one of which is skills. You want to take ownership of post-16 skills in Greater Manchester. So tell us a bit about the issues as you see them and what you would do with those powers if you were to get them.
Well, Steve and Tracy have said it, and I agree with everything that they've said. And we're about to test whether or not we can have it, because what they've said, we're about to put on the table and have a negotiation as part of that trailblazer process with the government. So it is about control of post-19 technical education at the city region level. That's what we're asking for. It's about co-design at the 16 to 19 level, recognizing that there's still some young people on a national route at that point, so you need to do it together with government. It is about control of the career service and bringing together a very messy, fragmented system in one place. We've already launched a UCAS-style system for apprenticeships, which is what I call it. It's more than that, but that tells you what it is, called GMAX. At the moment, that's a workaround. If you had the whole thing, careers and pathways linked to that, then you would be making a real change. The apprenticeship levy, as Steve said, that should be under our control. Unspent levy should come to the combined authorities so that we can put that into the skills pot. I'm going to play in a little bit of DWP devolution here, because we do need to think lifelong learning, and the inflexible skills offer that often comes through the kind of national DWP route. You think about the retraining requirement with regard to new methods of construction, retrofitting, the way the mechanics industry is going to change with electric vehicles. There's a huge job of retraining to be done with older workers, and we're not ready for that yet. So they'll all be in our asks, Rob, and I agree entirely with what when I'm doing we're open book in terms of what we're asking for, because I'm conscious that we're asking for it for West Yorkshire and Liverpool City region as well. So that's the way we're approaching. We've got absolute cross-party clarity on that between the mayors, haven't we? There's no real disagreement. If I could just add two things, possibly three, just in terms of what more do we need, if you like. And it's not necessarily more all about powers. I think we need a school-age curriculum that serves our city region properly. And by that, I mean, a move away from the elitist approach that I think came in a decade ago or more when I was Shadow Education Secretary. And I did say this then, and I stick to it now. How can we have a situation in a city region like this place that you're in today, you know, absolute hub of creativity, where creative subjects are just basically totally sort of devalued in the school curriculum? What does that say to young people who've got those skills that, oh yeah, they're not good enough to be in the English baccalaureate, and ICT is not good enough to be an engineer? It's honestly, I just think it's a madness. You've got such a backward-looking curriculum, and it doesn't serve a forward-thinking city region like ours, a creative city region like ours. That needs to change. There needs to be a much greater focus nationally on what we used to call social and emotional aspects of learning, mental health and well-being. That is a much bigger issue now, and we need to support young people with a broader set of issues that they're facing, and that needs to be funded. And the last point I'll make, Rob, before handing back to you, is it's culture change as well. I think the kind of mentality in that ivory tower called the DFE that Steve spoke about it's a London-centric mentality, but it's also a university-centric mentality, and it's always been there, and it's always been sending out the message that technical education is somehow second best. Well, you know what? It isn't. We need to sort of think seriously in this city region about degree apprenticeships, about giving people other routes, so that they don't have the debt worries that come with a traditional university route, which is right for some people, but not right for everybody here. And we're not seeing that change in thinking. But I just want to point to one specific thing, which is this government response to the Auger review. Am I right in thinking that they're proposing that if you don't get a certain grade in English and maths, you don't get access to the student loan scheme, therefore you can't go to university? That is such a backward step. That is so damaging to aspiration and social mobility, and it should be resoundingly rejected from this conference today, because, you know, as I said, young people have different skills, but they're meant to fit in a box that someone in Whitehall thinks they should fit in. But actually, we should be valuing young people in the breadth of talent that they've got, not just having this sort of kind of very narrow approach. And I also, as I understand it, the kind of way they want to change the student loan scheme is it's going to kind of push people away. People are going to be penalized if they're in lower earning jobs. And actually, that could take people away from doing the same job here that they then might do in London. It might push people south, actually, if they follow the logic of that. So I just think the whole issue here needs complete culture change. It needs to be much more locally driven. And I think, you know, for my city, as I look at it now, you know, it's so impressive in many ways. We've got employers in our city region that we didn't have before. My generation, to get on in life, had to go south. That was my reality. I tried to find a job in the city when I graduated, and I couldn't, and I had to give up and go to London. And that was my generation's reality. I think if you look at Manchester today, if people coming through from our 10 boroughs can kind of come through and kind of have the hope that they can work in our city region, and we draw on all of that talent, as Tracy's saying, that is when this place will start to fire on all cylinders. And instead, still at the moment, the approach that we've had that says, yes, it's all about the university route and we don't really care about the other one, that leaves too many young people in this city region coming through school, not knowing where their future is, not having a sense of direction, not having a sense of hope, not knowing what's available here, not knowing how to get to work in one of our skyscrapers. I'm fed up of it, like everybody on this panel. It's not good enough. We've been let down by this system that we've had in this country for so many years, a system that says academic is what's important, technical is something for other people. Well, no, we've got to call that out. We need clarity for our young people in terms of all of their skills, a skills and education system that supports all of them and gets to the point when they leave school and go into FE and HE, kind of says to them that there are options for them, whoever they are, wherever they come from, and the postcode where they were born does not hold them back. But sadly, we're still living in a country where it does.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. So we heard from the politicians now, but I think we should hear from the young people, as this is what it's all about. Now we're joined by three great young people from the Regional Youth Work Unit. So I'd like to just hear a bit about their experiences. They're sat looking a bit nervous in the front row. No need to be nervous, it's all fine. And I thought it might be nice just to, if you could just tell us a bit about yourselves, and then maybe just get a bit of a dialogue going between you and the mayors, like if they hear anything that they want to comment on. So we've got Kezia first. Now, Kezia, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
My name is Kezia and I'm from GYMCA, representing Khan. My focus today is on education, especially the gap that the pandemic has created and the long-term effects and disadvantages on young people. It goes without saying that our education has been affected, but many young people I speak to also share concerns around how this has affected our mental health and well-being, all of which threatens to jeopardize our future opportunities and prosperities. Short term, when looking at further education, and long term when looking at employment. And whilst online learning works for some individuals, some young people I surveyed found that this created more problems and also left a gap in education and emotional support that may have been picked up sooner in a physical classroom. This also shows that pandemic hasn't only affected our education, but also our abilities and attitudes and behaviors. My survey gathered that COVID has hit us hard and has damaged our mentality and academics. I think we need more assistance from the staff in schools, and we need catch-up lessons to mend these gaps. We also need teachers to put recap lessons from the knowledge missed in our current lessons. Thank you.
That's great, thank you, Casey. And I think the point that she's talking about is about the impact of the pandemic, and we all know about, you know, the lost education that so many millions of children have suffered. I mean, is that something that you as mayors are looking to tackle, or is that something that's, you know, central government is doing, or like what role can you play in, or can local leaders play in helping to sort of deal with that impact? Anyone who wants to?
Yeah, well, we identified that there's going to be an epidemic in this country of mental ill health during the pandemic. So that started to plan, I think it was around June 19, about what, no, yeah, that's about right, yeah, June 19, about what we needed to do. And we pulled together a summit on this. And you're absolutely right, Kezia. The propensity now for young people to be suffering mental ill health is enormous, it's huge, and it's grown. And because at this moment we have trusts who have responsibility for mental ill health, it seems that that's their responsibility, and it's not. It's all of our responsibility. So we're building in mental ill health into our Fair Employment Charter, and we've all got Fair Employment Charters. That's a central plank of it. And we've got all of the agencies now trying to work together. We've got a Zero Suicide Alliance, for instance, because unfortunately there are people who, when they have bouts of mental ill health, unfortunately take their own lives. So we're trying to identify the early signs of mental ill health to prevent that from working. But it's for everybody to do. It's for schools. And what you'll find is people saying, we haven't got the budget. Everyone will say they have schools and colleges and universities and the National Health Service and the trusts and employers and unions and everybody. It's everybody's responsibility, because this is a growing problem. And unless we start to tackle it at source, this will cost much, much more in the long run. So there should be, for instance, counselling services. Don't know whether you've got friends or anybody you know of who tried to get some counselling, who's having some problems. One young lad, and this is going back some time when we were members of Parliament, but one young lad had phoned my office and said that they were trying to get some counselling and had been told to come back in 6 months. So they were having a problem, being told to come back in 6 months, and then had threatened to take their own lives. And it was only, we were in a debate, and I had to walk out the debate and go and speak personally to this individual, because nobody else was saying, it's not my response, you know, it's not for me to do. We need everybody to take some responsibility for mental health.
Thank you, Steve. Now, I'm sure Tracy and Andy would come in on that as well, but I want to move on to Rory Scriven from Wigan. Rory, tell us a bit about yourself and what are the big issues on your mind?
So my name's Rory. I'm a young person that's grown up in the local authority care since the age of 4 and 15 now. I'm an activist for youth voice and children's rights. It's really nice to be here today, especially talking on education, employment and skills. especially as many care experienced people get missed out of these conversations, and there is a huge gap in the care sector, especially with education, employment and skills again. Very apparent that children care and overall care experienced people don't have the same life outcomes as our non-looked after peers. We have the highest number of children in care in the Northwest than the rest of the country, just over 19,000 to be exact, and the highest number of children's homes. Children in care have some of the worst educational outcomes in the country. I can tell you last year, only 18% of children in care achieved a pass in English and maths. We think mostly that's caused by stability, so half of children in care last year moved at least twice in their placements. And as a result, this takes an effect on employment chances for care experienced young people. And I definitely think it's clear to say that the system overall is failing young people. Although, despite this, there are charities across the North taking action, charities such as Youth Leads UK, based here in Greater Manchester, that are upskilling young people to reach their potential. Become, which is a national charity for children in care, and Young Care Leavers, which offers a care advice line, offering support and information to those with care experience. And it's very clear to say as well that child social care has moved up the political agenda. Something called the Independent Child Social Care Review was published within the past 2 weeks. I think it was a month ago today, chaired by Joshua McAllister, who was previously the CEO of Frontline, which is a social work charity. The report provides the government with an ambitious, affordable plan to fix a system that is broken. 2 of the 5 main missions set out by the report that apply to the conversations that we're having here today are to, number 1, double the proportion of care leavers attending university, and particularly high tariff universities by 2026, and to create 3,500 new well-paid jobs and apprenticeships for care leavers each year by 2026. The report provides care experienced people with a second chance at a safe, loving and happy childhood. So really the big question from me and the care experience community as a whole is, what are we doing in the north for children in care, and what are we doing differently?
Great answer.
That's a great question. Andy, let's go to your fellow native Wiganer.
Yeah, well, we live not far away from each other. Honestly, you put the points really directly there, and rightly so. To answer the question, we took a decision here to, amidst all the work we were doing on young people, to prioritise young people who'd experienced care. So under the government's covenant, we've developed a Greater Manchester Care Leavers Guarantee. And what we're trying to do is give a kind of standard set of things that absolutely are there for every care leaver in the city region. And I know our councils do some great work differently, but some basics that are things that you can count on. Because I think the point you're making is, you know, in a world that's become much more challenging, if you have not got parents to fall back on, you're in a much more exposed position, aren't you? Obviously, and we as the local state and the national state need to do so much more to put in place stuff to support you. So to give you an example of some of the things that are in that, I think all of our boroughs now, I don't want to say something that's wrong. You asked me what we're doing differently. Are offering free prescriptions to young people up to the age, I think, of 25. I'd have to check some of this, Rob, but that was one of the things that was a call. We've agreed with our housing providers that a young person who's experienced care can't be made, quotes, intentionally homeless, because that is often used against people, even though there's lots of stress and things that are difficult to manage. A real specific, which I asked the leaders here to back, actually during that difficult time that Kezia spoke about as well in the middle of the pandemic, when we were looking at a strengthened young person's guarantee in Greater Manchester, we have taken the decision here to extend our free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds to young people who've been in care to the age of 21. So I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I've been speaking with Become, which is the national charity for children in care and young care leavers. They're especially worried for care leavers with the cost of living crisis at the moment. I've had a look at Transport for Greater Manchester's website with that kind of care leaver local offer with the bus pass, and absolutely that is almost life-changing for some care leavers, because it saves them so much money that they now spend on food because of this crisis that we're going on at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, Steve touched on this. the good employment charter, fair employment charter. Yours is called a fair work charter. We all have it's basically the same thing. We've standardised it. You know, you've got the M62 here, right across here, representing 7 million people we represent, which is a humbling thing, isn't it, to think that? But we're all doing the same thing on work. Bus fares. I've announced us today.
Yay!
£2 cap on a single journey, £1 for kids. You're doing it. Steve's doing it right across. And I always like in a meeting to see if something tangible could come out of it. I'm going to put my 2 fellow mayors on the spot here on the back of what you said. But might we think about an M62 or a Northern Care Leavers guarantee that harmonises some of this stuff as much as we can in terms of, you know, we can't just take but we should try and do it, shouldn't we? So that, you know, a young person, because young people can dip from West Yorkshire into Greater Manchester and maybe into the Liverpool City region.
I think a big issue within child social care, every council offers a different local offer.
Yeah.
And all don't exceed that standard. There's really good bits. I know I've actually had a look within Liverpool, Greater Manchester and Yorkshire as well. But you would think that there's a base standard line, that they would all be the same, but they're really not.
That's what we're trying.
And that's why care leavers are moving across the country. Like you mentioned earlier, you moved down to the south. We're seeing a lot of children in care do that when they leave care because there are jobs there.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's better local
Just
offers.
one last point, quickly, I'll let Tracy come in. I mean, you're absolutely right. I think we, at our level, could set a baseline. These are the basics: housing, work, transport, prescriptions, whatever it might be, that we'll guarantee. And then the councils can add on top of that. And that's one way it could work. But I can't let go what you said about young people who've been in care not getting English and maths. This point about university finance I was making before, you've just brought it to life, because basically that scheme, if that comes through, it will discriminate directly against young people like your good self. I don't know if you did get, but you could be in a position where you are discriminated against by a very elitist reform, in my view. There's always the potential throughout your life to get your English and maths if you didn't get it first time round because of something that was going on in your life. And we should all join forces and fight this, because it would be massively detrimental to fairness, equality and social mobility if it comes in.
I'm going to make one last point as well. I did mention the Independent Child Social Care Review. I would ask you, as much as the care experience community would as well, to actually have a look at this review. It's basically a return on investment, because we're spending £9.9 billion every year on 102,000 children in care. That's way too much. And we're setting young people up to fail and care leavers. This report is a key which the government needs to turn to unlock child social care that sets children up for life, which I think is a really nice way to word it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rory. Thank you.
If I may just quickly jump in
Just
and
quickly,
say,
Tracy, if that's
very quickly, just say, Rory, thank you for sharing your experience and your smarts on this subject. And I do agree that there are too many people making money out of a system that for some is run for profit and not for outcomes. But just one bit of a glimmer of hope in Kirklees, a young girl, a young South Asian baby was found under a bench in a park. She went through the care system supported by Kirklees, went to Oxford. Her PhD was coming back to West Yorkshire, and working with care leavers, they've built their own care home. And sharing skills and training and deciding what they want and what they needed. It was eye-wateringly expensive, and I'm not sure it's something you could do everywhere, but I think that challenge about young people being moved around, put in from Manchester to West Yorkshire, no support, no care, and then left vulnerable and exposed to predators, just complicates everything, when all we want is the best futures, and to certainly see those young people through as we would our own children. We wouldn't just kick them out at 18. Both my kids are still at home, 29 and 24, so I might just kick them out. But, you know, we want to care for you as if you were our children. So I think that challenge from Andy is fair. Obviously, our councils do great work anyway, but it's fair to maybe consolidate across the region.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tracy. Now, Connie, you've been waiting patiently for your turn. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and what are the big issues for you?
Hi, I'm Connie from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and similarly to Kezia. I was wanting to talk a bit about mental health. So, as I'm sure you all know, we are in a mental health crisis. Mental health services are not up to scratch. They do not work and they are not sustainable. Young people spend months on waiting lists. Quite often the criteria for mental health services is to be at crisis point, and that's not acceptable. And young people are cut off when they turn 16 from mental health because there is not a good link between children's mental health services and adult mental health services. And when we're talking about education and employment and levelling up, young people's mental health is essential to that. If young people's mental health is not good, they cannot make the most of the opportunities provided them, they cannot achieve academic success, etc. So what my main question is how can devolution help with the mental health crisis, and what can devolution do to create better mental health services for young people in the Northwest?
Great question, thank you, Connie. We've not got a huge amount of time left, but I want to hear anyone who's got an opinion on that. What can devolution do on mental health?
For me, Connie, what I think is the big crisis is unhappiness more widely. And I think COVID has had, as we all know, that terrible impact. Well-being should be and is a priority for all the mayors. And I think to Andy's point, absolutely about what's been taken from schools. I used to be an actor. I know that drama and drama lessons are free therapy. And it's a self-expression, and being able to play an instrument is flow, or paint is flow. You're taken out of yourself. Writing, working with the Bradford Literature Festival, working with young writers, trying to get them to share their stories. I volunteered for a number of years with victims who've been tortured from all over the world in a writers group. And it sounds grim, but actually it was an extraordinary experience full of joy and laughter, as well as suffering but self-expression. And I think an ability to get your feelings out at a time when you've been so isolated. I think what we can do with our powers is increase well-being by having a greater creative opportunity and offer for young people. And one just perfect example, Simon Armitage, you'll all know, the Poet Laureate. We're running a West Yorkshire-wide primary and secondary school Young Poet Laureate, where everyone will have the opportunity to work with words and to be elsewhere in their mind. And I think it's about happiness and joy.
Fantastic. Andy, you had one very quick point you wanted to...
A couple of very quick ones. I mean, there is stuff we can do about innovating on delivery of support. So we put some digital services available to people, mental health support services through the pandemic. So that's a very specific thing. We did pilot something called Mentally Healthy Schools, where we brought counselling through some of our devolved health money into schools, independent counselling provided by the community and voluntary sector. That was really good. The challenge was sustaining it, and I think we should look back at things like that. But just one last point, Rob. I just think it was implicit in what Kezia was saying before. We've almost got to rethink support in this world we're in now, because it's not the same as the world we left behind in March 2020. And you can't say to a young person, it's as Steve was saying, it's 6 months to your appointment. That old way of kind of managing health service waiting lists is not good enough in a time when young people need the help now. So I'm asking my team here to look at something called a live well service. People call it social prescribing. So it's not the full, it's a more early preventative thing where it might be arts related, as Tracy was saying. It could be a whole range of things, counselling, it could be talking therapy, whatever it is. But it's actually a kind of service that you might access every day when you need it in your community, provided by the community and voluntary sector. And I think you can't leave people waiting with nothing. You just really cannot do that. And I think we need to find innovative ways of filling that gap. But we're looking at a social prescribing live well service, so that there's informal support available through volunteers and others every single day in every community.
Great stuff. Now, we started a bit late, and I think we're going to finish a bit late. We're overrunning slightly, but we've got just a few minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, just to see if there's any questions for our panels. I'll just say also that after this event finishes, you've got a mini summits around the venue. Hopefully everyone knows where they're going. I'm going to pick you there in the nice stripy jumper. I think there's a roving mic coming your way, and we'll see how long this question takes and whether we've got time for one more. Hopefully we will.
Thank you very much. I'm Ruth George I'm working for CPAG. I'm also a councillor in Derbyshire. And I bet Andy can guess my question, but possibly Tracy as well, because they both border my area. And it's to ask whether combined authorities and actually having a better offer in those combined authorities has an impact on particularly young people in bordering areas, and whether devolution can deliver for people across the whole country. If we get devolution, it's going to be centred in Derby and Nottingham, which are between 50 and 70 miles away, and most people there don't know where we are. Most people where I am, youngsters go to college in Greater Manchester because we haven't got colleges in Derbyshire. People go to work in Sheffield or Yorkshire or Manchester because there's less opportunities where we are. So how can we build equality that is not around postcodes, that includes everybody regardless, I'm afraid, of those regional boundaries?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, equally applicable to any of our areas, I guess. I mean, who'd like to come in on that? I guess it's an interesting sort of city versus town debate, isn't it? Like, what's your view on it? Andy, do you want to come in on this?
Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, well, I think just on the wider deal,
Politician.
it's unusual, Andy, handing over something. It must be a hospital pass, mustn't it? No, I think devolution, so what we've done is we've argued our own case for devolution in our areas, but we've argued the case for devolution per se. So just because we happen to have it, it's not like that we're saying let's pull the drawbridge up. We think that everybody should have what we've got, because it is the ability with convening powers to do some of the things that you've said. So these have heard me say it before, but there's an old saying that Scousers learn to read between the lines before they read words. Right, and so in your devolution agreement, it says lots of things that you should do, but it doesn't say anywhere things you shouldn't do. It doesn't say you should not do this. So we're doing it anyway and waiting for the government to stop us. But because we're doing it better than that lot, they're not stopping us from doing it. So we're convening all sorts of things in our areas. And you're right, the real issue for us is that we don't displace stuff from into other areas that haven't got the same powers as us. But we do have to try and look at our own geographies, because that's what we're charged with doing. But I think you're right, the knock-on consequences could be that those without devolution get left further behind, which is why we're all for everybody should have devolved powers.
It's good to see the mayors all working together to have combined...
Well, not always.
I'm sure some mayors work together better than others.
Indeed.
But to level up.
Okay. There's a last chap over there. We'll give it one very... Oh, I'm sorry, sir. There's a chap up there who's got the mic. Apologies, sorry. You might have to put your question to the mayors if you get a chance after. Got just a very short amount of time for your last question.
So my name's Adam Flanders. I'm from Beck2, the trade union. I cover the Northwest. So Andy and Steve, mainly, you'll remember back in the day of the good old Labour government, of education maintenance allowance, and that was a system a bit like the bus pass that young man spoke about. It was a lifeline to youngsters, but there was also a financial incentive for further education, and that allowed me, coming from the background I did, to undertake further education. I didn't have to worry about transport, I didn't have to worry about feeding myself when I was at college. I was able to buy myself some clothes and feel comfortable and decent. You know, just the basic fundamentals. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it made a huge difference to my life. It then allowed me to go on and get a job in the NHS, and again, under you as Health Secretary, my degree was paid for by the NHS. You know, there was support systems and mechanisms in place when the government invested in the right areas. It made me laugh when the minister, whose name I've forgotten from DV, talks about an analogy of a fort in Manchester protecting us from the Anglo-Saxons. I'm sure the local authority leaders in the north feel like the government are the raiders. And we're bringing out our inner warriors, was the last chair's thing, to fight against these cuts. We need proper investment in the proper areas. It's as simple as that. And devolution, you know, we need to look at things like EMA and supporting the youngsters to bridge that gap.
I think just on that, I mean, I was Shadow Education Secretary when that was removed. It was one of the things I was most proud of the Labour government, you know, that young people who didn't have the money at 16 could go to any school, college that they wanted to go to, or get on with their life without sort of things, other, you know, money holding them back. And that was behind my free bus pass when I came in as mayor. And actually I think it's better because it's universal, whereas EMA wasn't. You know, there was a cut-off of the EMA, and it was often a bit of a bone of contention there. And also, you just know, giving people mobility, unlimited mobility, is is an amazing, amazing thing. I remember a kid from Tameside, we had a celebration event for the R-Pass and we were saying, what you've all used it for? And this lad stood up and said, oh, I've used it to visit the other 9 boroughs, so I'd never been before. And the thing about that is, people are living in really, because of cost of transport, they're isolated. You know, we're not encouraging young people to get out and about and explore and own the city region that we're in. And, you know, I've obviously just could not agree more with you about that. And for me, I'll just finish on the point. For this for me is all about mobility and aspiration, isn't it? You know, at that age, don't limit people's horizons. You know, I don't think we're yet firing on all cylinders of this city region because the talent pipeline that Tracy described isn't there. But when it is there, and that's why I did the R-Pass, it was a statement of we believe in you. Others might not, but we do. We believe in every young person in Greater Manchester. We believe we've got the best talent in the north. And we want to get the most of it. And that means growing up thinking, you know, look, you know, a young person in Oldham, you know those skyscrapers, yeah, I might work there because I've got the R-Pass. I could get there and I know I can go and do something. And that, I think, is the phase we're at here in the north. And yeah, when ministers come up here and talk about thoughts, so well, let's turn it round, you know. I'll get my crown out and my cloak out, and we'll meet at Knutsford services on Monday morning, and we'll go south and we'll tell them how it's going to be in terms of life chances being fairly spread around this country. Because life chances are not fairly spread around this country. They're certainly not there for young people who've been in care, but across the north they're not there. And you know, I think 3 of us you've heard today, we are together. This is what brought us into politics, isn't it? We don't care about anything more than this, and it's what we're going to fight for as mayors together on your behalf.
Great. Andy, thank you so much. That was a great 45 minutes. It's whizzed by, so we wanted to find out what further powers does the North need. It seems like we have a lot of powers already. We have some powers. We really need more. So we've had a great debate. I want to say thank you to Andy, Tracy and Steve, and also very much to Kezia, to Rory and to Connie.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone's had an enjoyable session and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great stuff.
Okay.